Call it Shii-Cho, call it the determination form, or call it the way of the Sarlacc. Whatever you guys prefer, this week on Star Lores, we're talking about lightsaber combat Form 1. What's up guys, my name is Colin and you're watching Star Lores. So Form 1 or Shii-Cho is in many ways the most basic lightsaber combat form. It was developed in the dim past of the Star Wars galaxy when the Jedi Order were making the transition from bladed weapons to lightsabers. Now at its core, Form 1 is relatively simple. As you'd expect, it shares a lot of characteristics with traditional fencing and sword fighting practices. Its parries, its slashes, its ripostes, its wide swinging arcs are things that you would find in a typical sword fighting style. Now Form 1 also, it's worth noting, had an emphasis on disarming one's opponent instead of killing them. Now these two things combined meant that it was the perfect teaching technique for younglings, initiates, and Padawans.
Use your feelings, you must.
For most Jedi throughout the ages, Form 1 or Shii-Cho is the very first lightsaber technique they ever learn, and they need to master the basics of it before specializing in any of the other 7 forms. You could also say that it is the form that future lightsaber techniques would be based off of. Now, being developed in that transitionary period between blades and lightsabers, it doesn't take advantage of the unique properties of a lightsaber. Yes, Shii-Cho users can deflect blaster bolts, and yes, you can use Shii-Cho to fight another lightsaber duelist, but it's not particularly good at doing either. This form is so old, it was developed before the Dark Jedi Schism that splintered the Jedi Order and eventually gave rise to the Sith. At that time, there was simply no need to develop a lightsaber combat style that was specific to dueling other lightsaber combatants. Now speaking of which, of course, more forms flowed from Form 1 as the weaknesses of it became apparent. You had Form 2 Makashi, which was the duelist style. You had Form 3 Soresu, which was much better at deflecting said blaster bolts and being more efficient about it, and so on and so on. Now, because of the weaknesses we've already gone over with Form 1 and because of these new specialized lightsaber fighting techniques, you'd be forgiven for calling Shii-Cho obsolete. Now, despite its reputation as just a teaching form, there were a few Jedi who actually specialized and mastered Shii-Cho and took it way beyond what younglings learned at the Academy. One of which was everyone's favorite Nautolan, Kit Fisto. Now, Kit Fisto lived during the dying days of the Galactic Republic. He was considered one of the Jedi Order's better swordsmen, and he served in many, many battles during the Clone Wars. All throughout, he was a master of Form 1. The secret that differentiates a master of Form 1 and simply someone who's proficient at it is a kind of battle bloodlust, a kind of violent flow that Kit Fisto often enters when he's fighting and utilizing Form 1. What I mean by that is he walks a razor's edge during battle between control and complete surrender to the form. The ideal Shii-Cho style is one of total unpredictability, of relentless physical advancement and ceaseless aggressive flow. One where the master wielding the blade doesn't even explicitly or consciously know what move they'll be using next, and therefore their opponent could not possibly predict it. This is why, despite its relegation as a teaching form or its apparent obsolescence as a relic of a forgotten time, Form 1 can be absolutely effective and deadly in the right hands.
Impressive. Most impressive.
When we talk about lightsaber fighting techniques that bring one close to the brink of the dark side, or at least away from the light, away from the discipline that defines a Jedi, the conversation usually revolves around Vapod, or Vapod, whatever you prefer, the lightsaber technique developed by Mace Windu.
The oppression of the Sith will never return. You have lost.
But Form 1 seems to operate on a similar level, if a little less dangerous than Vaapad. To use the full strength of Shii-Cho, one must come this close to surrendering, this close to bloodlust, this close to violent action that could pull one potentially over to the dark side. Now when you consider this, it's actually pretty incredible that Shii-Cho was taught to every single Jedi initiate.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
Count Dooku had this to say on Form 1. Deliberate as a lumber droid, moving step by step, cutting off the angles. Clumsy, but relentlessly dogged. Kreia, or Darth Kreia, a popular character you may know from the Knights of the Old Republic games, adds, "It is simple, and its simplicity is its strength." Now, even in the hands of a proficient master like Kit Fisto, Form 1 does have its weaknesses. Although he was able to hold his own against General Grievous, no small feat, he did lose one-on-one to Asajj Ventress's Makashi style on Ord Cestus, and we all know what happened when he put it to the test against Darth Sidious. Well guys, that's about the long and short of Form 1 or Shii-Cho. What's your favorite lightsaber combat style, and do you think it could beat Kit Fisto's mastery of Form 1? Let me know in the comments below, leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you next week. This has been Colin for Star Lords, saying may the Force be with you.